Well, good morning, everybody. I'm so glad you're here for our three-part series on stained glass. And just to kind of give you a reason that I'm doing this is because of something that's really important to all of us that belong to the St. John's Cathedral. We have probably some of the most outstanding stained glass windows, I would say, in the United States. They're Tudor Gothic and they're absolutely beautiful. And every Sunday, as I sit in the cathedral, I think, well, I wonder what's going on in that one, or I wonder why he did this, or oh, look at the light that's shining in the window. I wonder why they placed that window that particular way. So I got to thinking, and I thought, well, gosh, perhaps there's other people that would like to know this information as much as I do. And those of you that have been with me on this Art at Noon salon since we started, which believe is or not, is like almost 5-6 years ago. You know how once you're a librarian, it doesn't get out of your blood. And one of the things we're called as information specialists. And so that's what we do. We look for information. We have all of this stuff up in our heads and just love to share it with everybody. So today I'm going to share this information that I have gleaned in the last couple of months about stained glass. And for me to take on the job of trying to tell you about the history of stained glass in an hour was kind of ludicrous, because it's about a couple of thousand years of glass making, glass blowing, and glass participation, and trying to pull it down into an hour of time. Just the history of it was kind of undoing. So here's what I've done. I'm going to kind of give you an overview. We're going to start out giving an overview, and then I have several video clips I'm going to share with you, because that just explains it much better than I could. And then I'm going to share with you all of the little information, tiny little tidbits. I think that's what's great about history. It's not the overall process, but all of the little tiny bitty things that make it interesting, and especially for art. So we're going to look at stained glass in several different ways today. But first of all, let's just take a look at some of the most beautiful things about stained glass. And I'm going to share with you, when I typed in 10 most beautiful stained glass windows in the world. And over, this window comes up over and over. This is the Al-Mulk Mosque, and it's one of those places everyone says. I have a friend that has seen this, and she says it is just, you want to stay there forever. It's also referred to as the Pink Mosque and the Mosque of Colors, and it provides just a wonderful display as all of these thousands and thousands of colors come through this stained glass patterns, and it makes up the interior. I've lost my, okay, we're coming. Yeah, we got him. Some of you may have been here. This is a Coventry Chapel or church. It was a 14th century Gothic church, and it was bombed during World War II. And it was decided that the ruins would be preserved and a new church would be built alongside. And that new church was St. Michael's Cathedral, and it's home to a spectacular set of stained glass windows designed by the late, great Lawrence Lee. They also have preserved the remains of the old cathedral's medieval stained glass windows, which were designed by John Thornton. This is a beautiful example of stained glass in the Brazilian capital of Brasilia. This is a UNESCO heritage site. It's home to a number of just beautiful architectural gems. Among them is, and I'm sorry, I'm not good at Spanish. I'm an East Texan, and I will just murder it, but I'm going to try. It's called the Santuario Don Bosco. And though its exterior might seem unassuming, the interior is bathed in ethereal blue light, thanks to 80 stained glass windows that make up 12 different shades of blue. Well, now while Notre Dame and the Sacré-Cœur Basilica might be two of the most famous religious buildings in Paris, it's this little Sainte-Chapelle that takes our breath away, at least when it comes to stained glass windows. It was built in the 13th century. The chapel features some 6,500 square feet of these beautiful stained glass windows across 15 panels, each one of these depicting biblical scenes. In 2015, they had a meticulous restoration. So if you get anywhere close to this one, go see it. Now, this is an example of what we think of, or a lot of people think of when they think of stained glass, they think of stained glass windows. But as we're going to explore stained glass, we're going to realize that stained glass has been used in many different forms. For example, and here are a few of them: light fixtures, vases, home ornaments, and also outside. And the one on the right is up in Patrick's neck of the woods at a bed and breakfast up in around Asheville, North Carolina. And I love this one because it's just so simple, but the artist built these so that, and they placed them in the garden so that the sun would catch them at different times of the day. And also it enhances the garden's flowers as well, with the beautiful light coming not only on the garden, but the stained glass as well. And as you can see in the middle, this is what we think about sometimes when we think about stained glass, and this in the 11th and 12th centuries. But stained glass has just grown in the contemporary sense. This is Burke's beautiful stained glass example that is freestanding. A freestanding stained glass is absolutely beautiful in a museum. And this is Connie Wildey's St. Catherine. He molded after St. Catherine, and he is probably one of the foremost Black artists and sculptors and painters around, and he loves working in stained glass. So this kind of gives you an overview before we really get started in getting into the meat of what we're going to talk about today, about what we think about some of the most beautiful places in the world that house these stained glass examples of stained glass windows. And I wanted to start off because, as I said, trying to narrow down the history of stained glass for a presentation, and I was worried about it just being ever so much boring just hearing me talk, but I thought to give you an example of someone who has narrowed it down in about 5 minutes. So we're going to listen to a professor who is going to talk about the history of stained glass, to give you an overview.
The history of stained glass is the tracing of a really important art form that includes images, but it also includes the reflection of light itself. Stained glass largely came in the Gothic era with the Gothic cathedral. There were structural things in the Gothic period, the flying buttress, that allowed the wall to be opened up. And so consequently, the stained glass can go into it. So it's a really symbiotic system. Also, the buildings were full of sculpture, some of which carried the same imagery as the glass, so that the same thing would hit you again and again and again. think a lot of medieval glass scholars would say that people did not read these things literally, and that the idea that they function as direct Bibles for illiterate people probably isn't so. It's possible that there were guides who told people what was in the window, but you wouldn't get it without a text and without a guide. Most of them are quite complicated, and they do function much more through this combination of how they look and affect you rather than by linear narratives. One of the things we're really used to is image saturation. I mean, we all flip out our phones, we have images all over the place, but people didn't see a lot of images, especially in the heyday of the Gothic period. There was no visual prints. You had to be really rich to own a painting. People really lived in an image desert, and this huge building, which creates this effect with these images, it's not like anything anybody's seen. The period between the middle of the 16th and the middle of the 18th century is usually seen as a low point in the development of stained glass. The Catholic Church, for one thing, started favoring a Renaissance architectural style. And a Renaissance architectural style is based on the style of the Greeks and the Romans. And so, of course, stained glass doesn't fit in that kind of architecture. The Reformation had very problematic relationship with visual imagery, all told. It went from people smashing it actively to get rid of it, to just not building it, not having, say, for example, crucifixes in churches. It all went away. People weren't supposed to be looking at pictures of any sort that kind of made up things that weren't in the text. Gothic revival was a period in the 19th century, which had an ideological component as well as a practical component. And its idea was that the Church of England had gotten too rational, and that to return to ritual activities, incense, vestments, and churches that looked like medieval churches would help people's spirituality. The fact that we can bring our own sensations to the image makes it particularly valuable. And when people were thinking about how to enliven religion, it underwent a tremendous upswing. Of course, the glass is very important in the creation of this kind of emotive space. And so when modern architects are trying to create space that creates a particular effect or feeling, they will sometimes use stained glass, often in religious buildings, sometimes in other kinds of buildings. I think one of the reasons stained glass has endured for a long time is that it's both a window, but it's also an image, but it also conveys a particular message because it suggests that what you see isn't all there is.
So today we're going to this is kind of our agenda. We'll see how it works, because this is, as y'all know, we never know what's going to happen with technology. So hopefully it will continue to flow. Stained glass is believed to originate from the Middle East in a way to bring light, as the professor said, to allow into buildings, but so they were not completely closed. There's evidence of mastery of creating stained glass in Rome and Egypt, and it's believed that those empires helped to spread the art form. The earliest glass windows were a huge transition from how mankind has been using glass beforehand, and mainly was just weapon blades made of volcanic glass, obsidian, and simple houseware such as bowls and vases. The windows of this time, this particular time in medieval Europe, were expensive and at a constant risk of having their light source blocked by new buildings, rendering the art useless. The glass in the centuries prior were as valuable as precious stones. For example, ruby-colored glass was the equivalent of an actual ruby and can help explain why the churches and the castles of medieval Europe were the only buildings commissioning stained glass for a long period. The Augsburg Cathedral is believed to have the oldest existing stained glass window. And now remember I said existing, the oldest existing windows, but the construction of the windows, even those, they show a great knowledge of advanced techniques. The windows in this cathedral suggest that other prior windows had existed because of the advanced techniques and suggested the idea that the creator of the window had knowledge from all across Europe. But these are the earliest existing windows still standing today. This is a Roman Catholic church that's located in Bavaria, Germany. And there's all kinds, if you get, those of you that travel a lot, if you get to Bavaria and Germany, go see these, because there's all kinds of hidden things. I could spend 2 hours just talking about this one cathedral, and especially these beautiful antique windows. If you're not familiar with this history, this church almost entered catastrophic, damage. But the windows, thanks be to God, were spared and lived to have and share a story of their own. Well, as we were talking about in this construction in this age, as they were forming these stained glass windows for these beautiful buildings and cathedrals, they started getting new colors for the stained glass. And these new colors were introduced over the centuries as new metals were discovered, which allowed for experimenting into lighter colors. The only colors available in the Middle Ages, believe it or not, was kind of a saffron yellow, a purplish red, a green, a blue, a copper. And miniatures often provided the models for these stained glass windows. And here's an interesting fact. The years of the Anglo-Saxon years, the archaeologists, especially in England, have done lots of digging around sites that were known Anglo-Saxon sites, and they discovered that glass vessels from the Anglo-Saxon period were filled with all kinds of color. These glass is usually, and this is a range of the colors behind it, and it really isn't a good picture. I wish I could have got a better picture, but they were a range of colors, and they were spectacular. And making these stained glass and making the colors in stained glass is an extremely complicated task. So Saxon glassmakers had to be able to balance colorants and decolorants. And all of the vibrant vessels that they found represent an extremely colorful technological, cultural, and economic achievement. All in all, glassmakers didn't just bring color to the Dark Ages. They were an excellent prism through which the archaeologists can understand the society itself. The Gothic stained glass windows, particularly in France, they popularized the heavy use of reds and blues in window designs. And you can see in this beautiful rose window, the choices, the rich reds and blues, that they can be really seen. And especially in the large circular Gothic chapels. The Gothic style of stained glass windows reigned supremely in cathedrals, especially in the 1200s or the 13th century. Now, after that, we go into the series with painting on glass. Painting on glass became the next popular style for stained glass windows, and it rose to popularity in the 14th and 15th centuries as a way to achieve a greater detail in windows, especially in the faces and hair of figures. The stylistic shift was a drastic change from the previous Gothic windows with their heavy, heavy use of vivid colors. And as was said in the history of stained glass, the purpose in these windows, one of the purpose in these windows was to enhance the light, because the painting also of this particular painting of the glass allowed the windows to be made in much larger pieces of glass, as the lead was no longer to create every distinct line in the image. Buildings were starting, and here's one of them. This is one of the a Gothic church in the 15 and 1600s. They were beginning to be designed around really grandiose windows themselves, which could provide a majority of the life inside. This style now focused on just a monochrome palette on the background. And this came to rise, and those of you that went on the Spires in the Sun art walk with us a couple of weeks ago, Jonathan spoke a lot about this term, grisale, okay? And we have some excellent examples of grisale in, and I think he pronounced it better than I did, because I'm not, and Grady's probably cringing right now as I pronounce French. But anyway, this is a style that rose to popularity to further enhance getting the light into the window. And it focused on this monochrome palette on the background or the entire window, with details painted on using silver. In the 16th century, stained glass windows began to be used to decorate down here, as you can see, community buildings, homes, and businesses, such as inns. And these particular windows were basically secular. And this is the King's Manor, by the way, which is an old inn in England. Then the next thing that arose that kind of changed the way stained glass was silver stained. And you will see this a lot, the use of silver stain. And this was the use of leading also was further reduced in favor of planing on silver stained glass. And this was driven by the desire for detail. Notice the detail in there, okay? But with more color than the Grisale style. See, if you compare these two right here, there's a little bit more color. It doesn't look a little bit more color. Okay, donors to the art also began to be immortalized in the windows, and they paid for being added into the design. The Grisale style of the 14th century and 15th centuries was a stark, and we're going to look at that, contrast to the Renaissance style windows. So let's look at that, the difference. As you can see on top, this is the Grisale, and these are examples of Renaissance windows. So there is an extreme difference and stark difference. The Renaissance brought the return of more vivid colors, as you can see, that had been scarce in the early centuries. Also, it brought a use of perspective. We're talking about perspective in artistic form, adding dimension to figures. And both of these forms had a significant amount of detail painted onto the glass, but only the Renaissance style windows, so you can see, match the resurgence of colors in the other art forms of the time. I call this post-Renaissance. But after the end of the Renaissance, especially in the 19th century, there was a revival of historic styles and techniques that focused more on the quality of glass than the painting. And I just want to mention here, during the time of between, we'll say, this is the post-Renaissance, and this particular time, maybe this 1800s, that was when Cromwell and the Reformation came in, and Cromwell, if you've read anything about him, there was no, as she alluded to the fact the professor did, who was describing in the history, the Reformation, they went in and destroyed all the Catholic churches. In Ireland, all of them were destroyed. In fact, I read one article, and it was on the internet, so I don't know how correct it is, but there wasn't a piece that when they went to refurbish the stained glass windows in the resurgence of the Gothic style, there wasn't any stained glass in Ireland at all. It all had to be shipped in because it was completely destroyed. And also the way of making the stained glass as well, they had to import people to do it as well. So the Gothic style made a resurgence in popularity because of its focus on glass and historical techniques. Now, many renovations of older buildings, as I just referred to, had damaged the stained glass windows. And so this allowed for new windows to be remade and older styles to be placed in these buildings. In the 19th century building, and I wanted to show this one to you because for several reasons. It's a very important church. This is a Catholic church, and it's the August, and I'm gonna read his name, Augustus Welby Northman Pugin. He was the architect who almost single-handedly established the Gothic style as the only visible ecclesiastical architecture. He started to build his first church in 1837, and he also designed the stained glass windows. The wealthy built medieval castles and new churches, both of which needed appropriate medieval furnishings. John Ruskin, some of you may recognize, he loved the morality style of the Gothic church. Now, in the United States, there was a great rush to develop stained glass in the early 19th century. And that's when you will see the revival, especially in the Episcopal Church, of this Gothic style of architecture. And it even trickled down into the Carpenter Gothic style churches, as we have so many, thank goodness, left. It was the preferred style in America from the late 1840s until the war between the states. Then in this century, geometric shapes began to take place, and designs and landscapes with real vibrant colors became popular, especially in America and England during this time of revival. The 20th century brought about new styles and also an appreciation for this court dead art. It was now revived. In early 20th century North America, stained glass was primarily associated with the artistic designers Lafarge and Louis Comfort Tiffany, who both used a novel technique of opalescence glass. In this opaque texture and painterly design bore little relationship now to the medieval stained glass. In this new study of the work of Charles Connick, Peter Carmack, an expert in post-medieval stained glass and the author of the Arts and Crafts of Stained Glass, while denouncing the simpering vulgarity of Tiffany's windows, Connick, and we'll discuss him a little bit later, I don't think he was so much a rival as he just did not appreciate perhaps the modernistic twists that Tiffany and Lafarge were using. He said, "I'd like to say that stained glass windows need peaceful sleep when the sun goes down, as do the rest of us. And so I like the idea of letting them take their place in the light of day and gently ignoring them at nightfall." I love that quote. Then moving right along to the next style that we see in stained glass, our aesthetic styles of pattern, semi-abstract, and non-figural work became popular. And this is a Tiffany piece, especially in the United States. I think we're all familiar, hopefully, with Tiffany. And then stained glass began to take on new forms as the New Age came. It became lampshades, other home products. And this became known as the arts and crafts movement, bringing fine art into the home of the middle class. Now, Europe's response to this, arts and crafts or aesthetic, was what they refer to as Art Nouveau. Of Georges Foucault was in Paris, and it's now in the Carnival Museum. I want y'all just all right, this is saying that my internet is unstable, so hang in there with me if something happens, okay? I want you to take a look. This is truly an example of Art Nouveau. And as we delve in the next year, we will be doing several painters and artists and giving examples who were really influenced by this Art Nouveau examples. Look at first of all, heavily, the stained glass. These are panels up here. Notice how they use different shapes, the colors. These types of florals in Art Nouveau were very very important and kind of stand out as a characteristic of that type of artwork and art design. So this would be your Art Nouveau. So we're moving through, we're coming up from Gothic. Now notice how far we've come so far. And then we come to the next biggie style, which was Art Deco. And Art Deco is really kind of American art, I think, because it just conveyed beauty and strength. And this was very popular during the Great Depression in our country, when most of the country was left unemployed. During the 1930s and 20s and 30s, many artists, and we've talked about them, Jackson Pollock was one, was commissioned to decorate public buildings in Art Deco style. And they were massive pieces with fluid and vivid colors, murals. Even though it originated in the 1920s in Paris, it made its way across the ocean and really flourished, as I said, in the 1930s. The materials that were used to provide this Art Deco were rare. They were expensive minerals like ebony and ivory, as well as materials like chrome, stainless steel, and plastic. And all of these were kind of brought to light with the stained glass. It's noted, Art Deco is noted, and this is a really good example of it. Art Deco is noted for its geometric shapes. So when you see something like this, it's different from Art Nouveau in lots of ways, because Art Deco is noted for its geometric shapes, bold colors, use of man-made materials. Some physical examples, if you can, in your mind, of Art Deco would be the Empire State Building. And if you go to Miami, if you spent time in Miami Beach and around there, you see a lot of Art Deco, and you see a lot of stained glass windows. A lot of the motifs that were used were pyramids, sunbursts, zigzags, and also real stylized florals. Now we come to the 20th century and the 21st century, and they're doing all kinds of things with light and stained glass, use of lights. This is one. So how far we've come, all right? Today we see the use of stained glass as varied as it has ever been. This is light painting, and this is by a fellow named Stephen Knapp. And this particular painting or light painting is in front of a building on a college in Worcestershire. And I can't even say that, so forgive me. It's specially treated glass that acts as a prism, transmitting one color and reflecting its complement. Knapp uses multiple pieces of glass that have been cut, shaped, and polished, allowing him to manipulate the light and paint with pure color. I want to show you where he has placed this. This is the building. This is the library of the college. And he uses, he says it's a great canvas, which I was drawn to, this, this particular form of art. It's a blank slate, and at night, there's nothing there. It's a really great dark area, just crying out for something. He said, I wanted to create a large piece of artwork for the campus. I wanted people to look at art, technology, and innovation and see how it had all come together. And if you can see just a little bit right here, we're still talking about the panels of the artwork. So we've looked at art, we've looked at the history of stained glass from a perspective and how it has grown over the ages, from starting out from this, really, right here. This is in Jarrow, England. And this is not, it's not a very big, maybe 12 inches in diameter, but this little round window right here, this little round window set high in the wall of St. Peter's Church, Jarrow, is the oldest stained glasses so far, everybody says. And I've read lots of things, and most historians agree, not everybody, but most historians agree that this is the oldest stained glass window in the world. And it's set, here's the picture of the little chapel or the little church, and here's the window, and here's what it looks like. It's on the right-hand side of the chancel. Looking up, you can see 3 deeply recessed windows. These windows opening all the original. They were made when the church was completed in 685. To build and furnish his new churches, the man who commissioned them was Benedict Biscop. He imported stonemasons and glaziers from Europe, as both skills were unknown to the Anglo-Saxons that he felt at that before that time. He was a traveler. He made 5 trips to Rome, plus various other excursions during his life. And the churches he built, St. Peter's in Wearmouth and St. Paul's in Jarrow, were the first stone buildings since the departure of the Romans, and the first with glass windows. The original glass was long gone when Rosemary Camp began excavating Jarrow in 1963, and that went on until 1978. But during these excavations, Camp and her team found many small pieces of glass that date from the time the monastery was built. So when the dig was finished, these fragments of glass were put back in place in the window for which they had been made 1,300 years ago. I think that these anonymous glassmakers would be astonished, but not a little pleased to learn that their glass still lets the light into the church they crossed the sea to work on. So, purpose letting light in, but also the purpose of stained glass is an art form. It's a strong example. Stained glass is a strong example as how something can transition from just a functional item into an art form. As the windows became larger, with larger individual pieces of glass and higher quality was being produced in the medieval period, religious figures realized they could use the windows to educate the illiterate masses about the Bible. Now, you heard from our historian that there's always a different side to every story in history because you're not living it 1,300 years ago. We've always heard that, well, I have been taught that that's the main reason that these windows were put into these cathedrals was to teach the illiterate masses. But I think you heard a different story from what she was saying as well. But anyhow, this is an example. They are a higher quality of artistic endeavor. And also they were used to educate as well. And they were also used for light, used because in the cathedral aspect, and even now, even if it's not, if we're not talking about, we're not talking about spirituality, we're just talking about buildings and structures and things that we give with, we know that light represents these things, or it did, knowledge and truth and wisdom, a divine presence, often contrasting with darkness, which symbolized ignorance and evil. And that's how they felt in the Middle Ages. And there's a key point that we need to think about light. There is a universal understanding of light, universal across religions. Light is generally associated with positive aspects like goodness, enlightenment. And so it makes it a very widely understood symbol. Light is often seen as a way to illuminate hidden truths and reveal the divine, allowing people to see things clearly. So this is another reason that artists, lots of artists, are generating towards stained glass and the use of that to maneuver light. It's a spiritual journey. Walking in the light represents a life guided by faith and morality, while being in darkness symbolizes spiritual blindness or getting lost. It's symbolic because many religions incorporate light-related rituals like candle lighting or lamp offerings to signify the presence of the divine and to seek enlightenment. Here's some examples of light symbolism in different religions. Christianity, Jesus is often referred to as light of the world, representing his role as a source of salvation and truth. Islam, Nur, N-U-R, is the Arabic for light. It's a significant concept signifying divine guidance and knowledge. Hinduism, diyas, small oil lamps, are lit during festivals to symbolize inner light and the removal of darkness. Buddhism, light is associated with enlightenment and the removal of ignorance, with the Buddha often depicted as the source of radiant light. So light is powerful example, and when these artists were conveying and trying to bring people into the light in the Renaissance, in the Middle Ages, it's still continued today. And I want to share with you this, and we're just going to watch just a few minutes of it. But the cathedral in Washington, D.C., when they were constructing this cathedral, they paid extreme close significance to where they placed their stained glass windows, to how light came in through these windows, what colors would reflect across the surface of the inside, and how it would affect and what emotional pull it would feel. And this is just we're going to look at a small clip of light moving through this cathedral.
But it's no big deal. If I've lost the bulk of it, no, I don't think we can. We gotta mute it.
Well, onward from the medieval ages, the use of stained glass had dual purpose to create, as we said, the religious images, and to highlight the wealth of those who owned the buildings or were patrons of art. That was another purpose for these stained glass windows. In more recent times, some older homes, governmental buildings, businesses have stained glass as a design element. This is another purpose for stained glass. And based on this texture, the opacity of the glass as a way to increase privacy without decreasing light as well. And some of you may, if you've been to Chicago, you may know where this is. This is Frank Lloyd Wright's home. And oh my gosh, this is the way it looks with the sun coming in. In general, the main purpose of stained glass has stayed rather simple throughout history, to let the light into buildings while keeping the building completely enclosed. Now, I could not spend the time, nor do I have the expertise to explain how stained glass is made and how the stained glass windows are. And I wanted to share with you, this is a very quick little video from the Victoria and Albert Museum. And they have some of the most remarkable collections of stained glass. If you get to London, make sure to go and see some of these exhibitions or exhibits of stained glass. So let's take a look at how this particular stained glass window right here was made.
Sandy, it's not advancing.
When the cathedral,
Sandy, the video's not advancing.
oh, it's not,
Yes.
okay.
Wayfair helps
Can
all of
you
us
see it
create
now?
a home we love.
Wayfair vibe at our place, Lester.
But we all got our own thing.
Is it advancing now?
And not to miss,
No,
What?
no.
Okay, I'm sorry, about that. When did it stop? Can you see,
We're,
can
we're,
you
we're
see?
still on the cathedral. We're still on the cathedral. It hasn't advanced from the light slide and the last bit of the cathedral.
Okay, I'm so sorry. Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
yes.
Okay. This is the problem that you have with technology, boys and girls, right here.
Boys and girls.
Okay, okay. So let me see, are you on, can you see this one?
No, it's still
It's the same
stuck.
image.
Which one does it say, light?
Yes.
Okay, it's the light one. Catherine, the
Yeah.
only thing I know is go out and come back in again. If it's not at this, let me see if I can make them. Okay, let's try this.
You want to stop sharing and go back in?
Yes, let's hang on just a minute.
Okay.
Oh, okay. We'll try it. I'm sorry.
And Catherine, was there ongoing dialogue, even though the picture was remaining still? I wasn't hearing Sandy for that period of time.
Yeah, it's a technical glitch, Patrick. So we're
Okay.
working on it.
Okay.
Okay. All right, we're trying our best. Can y'all still hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. All right, good, 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 good. All right.
Okay, now
Can you
it's
see the
switched.
screen?
Yes, we see your
Okay.
screen.
Okay, good. Can we go back up to the light?
Yes.
All right. Okay, and were you able to see that? All right, you were able to see, you see the light one now, Catherine?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, all right. Catherine, I'm gonna play just a little, did you see this video?
Yeah, we saw the video of the cathedral, the National Cathedral. It got stuck there. We didn't see Frank Lloyd Wright after it.
Okay. All right, did you see this? The
Yes.
Middle Ages,
Is
Catherine?
this after it?
Yes, Middle
No,
Ages.
we did not see it.
No, we didn't.
You didn't see this? Thank you. Okay, so I'm sorry. Okay, you did see this one,
Yes.
right? Okay. All right, now can you see this one?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, great. Then we're gonna go right over his religion. Okay, it's hang in there with me. Okay, great. Okay. All righty. This is the reason we're just so crazy about. I was afraid of this. All righty. Okay. Okay, I can't get back. I can't get it back. I'm sorry.
Not your fault. But just an aside, I don't know how many people on this call go to St. John's Cathedral, but if you look in the back, you'll see one piece of stained glass that is from Tiffany's, and then you compare it. It's included in a larger frame with just a German artist who was doing the rest of the stained glass throughout the cathedral. And you can really see the differences. It's pretty amazing. The Tiffany
It
glass
really,
is
it really
is
Can y'all see this one now? Religious images?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
great. Super, super. Okay, let's finish up then if we can. All right. This is the religious images. Okay. The next one that the purple.
Okay, you were frozen for a second.
Okay, can you see it now? Your screen
Yeah,
share.
we see Frank Lloyd Wright now.
Okay,
Yeah, frankly.
beautiful. And you see this, let the light get in and
Yes.
keep the building enclosed. And we talked about
Yes.
that. You heard me talking about that. This one you did. My thing says that my video, my internet. Do you see Victoria and Albert, everybody?
Yes.
Okay,
Yep.
this is how it was made. And I'm sorry, I have I think the whole problem is the internet with me is very unstable. Let's try this one. This is how stained glass is made. Let's try that.
You might need to hit play again, Sandy. There you go.
Is it freezing?
Yeah, okay, now it's working.
Okay, good.
Sandy, are you able to turn up the volume on it?
Text me, Catherine. If something's wrong, text me. Can you hear me, Catherine?
Yes.
This is a beautiful Tiffany that's in the Met. So if you get to the Met in New York City, be sure and go and look at they have just a wonderful display of Tiffany. And we do too, very close to us. We have an excellent example of Tiffany work in the Morris Museum. It's in Winter Park. And in fact, we will be doing an art walk in a couple of months. So stay tuned if you want to go with us to take a tour of that museum. The one thing that I love about, they have a new exhibit called Landscape at the Met that I'm looking forward to seeing. And it's in the Tiffany Woods Company, women were in the 1900s put to work and they were great artists. And this landscape is an example of one of his great female artists. So if you get a chance to go to the Met, be sure and go and see that. When illuminated by natural sunlight, stained glass isn't static. It changes in an instant. The nature of glass is to bend light. As the viewer moves about, his or her perspective is no longer a fixed point. Movement of the viewer changes the angle of refraction in all surfaces of the glass. The viewer moves and the glass changes. It's not the essence of light, it is light. Glass, with the manipulation of light, captures the viewer's imagination in the present moment. When we walk into a room of colored light, our imaginations are caught and suspended for a time by the beauty of the light and myriad of color and transformations. This, my friends, is the spirit of stained glass. And the two images that you see before us are images that we recently saw that are absolutely beautiful. The one on the left is from the Carpenter Gothic Church in Orange Park, Grace Chapel. The one on the right is from the Grace Church. And the one on the right is from the stained glass windows that are in St. Margaret's Church on Fleming Island. Both of these churches are Carpenter Gothic. Both of them are in this little book right here that we recommend for any of you that want to see beautiful Carpenter Gothic buildings. Most of these churches house beautiful, not only architecture, but also gorgeous stained glass windows. Another book that I recommend to you is the book Charles J. Connick's American's Visionary Stained Glass Artist. He was a contemporary of Lafarge and also of Tiffany, but he had an extremely different view from Tiffany and Lafarge about stained glass and how it was used. And he really kind of is, I think he and Tiffany both are the forerunners of the modern contemporary arts that we have today. I am so sorry for the technical difficulties, but I did warn all of you. But believe it or not, we finished only 9 minutes a time, and I can't believe that. So I hope that all of you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed preparing it for you. The stained glass windows in our church are absolutely phenomenal. Our next stained glass experience, part 2, is going to be artists, stained glass artists. And we're going to talk about early stained glass artists and show examples of their work, and also contemporary ones as well. And where they got their inspiration as well. And then in part 3 of this, we will be talking about the cathedral stained glass windows, and we will be doing an art walk in there. And Dean Kate has graciously going to lead us on that art walk. We will have a kind of know before you go with part 3, where I give you an overall, the basic history of the stained glass windows that are in the cathedral, and she is going to walk us through them. It's going to be something you don't want to miss. Also, we are gathering together for a art walk to see the Mars, the Tiffany glass in the Mars Museum. So I am through, and I thank you very much for joining me. Catherine, do you have anything you wish to say?
Thank you, Sandy. That was wonderful. And we appreciate all of the great information that you shared with us. It was beautiful. And it'll be great to listen to it again. Also, just want to give everyone a heads up. Our next art walk is going to be March 11th. And that is going to see one of the churches featured in Spires in the Sun, Church of Our Savior, and then also the Mandarin Museum and Historical Society. There is a new sculpture of Harriet Beecher Stowe there, and plus other things that we'll be visiting. And that is a ticketed event. So RSVP online, and then it's $20 a ticket, and that includes your ticket into the Mandarin Museum. So look for that on March 11th. Thank you so much, everyone, and we look forward to being with you next time.
And one thing that I wanted to say before we go, I hope that those of you that join us for part 1, part 2, and part 3, when after the art walk with Kate, we will be gathering together, and we're going to sit, because one of the things that Art at Noon we stress is lifelong learning and getting together and discussing things as well. So we will, after that particular art walk, we will all join together and we will talk about stained glass. So what you have learned, the experiences, how you feel about it, just a general, just like a book discussion, we're going to have a big art discussion. So I hope that you can join us for these 3, because I think it'll be a really rich discussion that afternoon. Thank you so much. We're looking forward to see you next.
Thanks,
Catherine,
Sandy. It was good.
Thank
Catherine?
you.
Yeah,
Just a
Karen,
moment.
Catherine,
Thank
Please stop
you.
recording.
do you have the dates for the next